Hi, my name is Martin. I want to tell you something about myself, or rather, about my parents. So to speak, share with you. I think you'll be as shocked as I am, and it'll be fully justified. Tell me, do you have parents? And what are they? How do they treat you? I know that all of them may not be perfect. Perhaps you often quarrel with them, argue, and sometimes you really want to get out of the house, right? Here, I also have this happen here. Well, it was more accurate. While they're not going to sell me, you know how it is, like things or products. Here, you are tired of a thing, or it's outdated, and you decide to get rid of it in a way that's profitable for you. They decided to do the same thing with me. Unpleasant? Oh, and how unpleasant it was when I found out about it. If you want to know all the details, then listen further. By the way, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Put a like and be sure to write your opinion in the comments. To begin with, I'm the oldest child in the family. There's two other children, my twin brothers, John and Jack. Well, so you can roughly understand how the family treats them and me. If there's something delicious left in the house, then it's given to the twins, and it doesn't matter whether they want it or not. When we go to the store, first to buy all the youngest, and to me, most, is I always tried to look after them, help them with their homework, pick up from school, kindergarten, mug. Sometimes my mother made me cook special breakfasts, where you need to show maximum culinary skills. Yes, it was very unpleasant for me, and parents always have one argument for everything. They are younger than you. Of course, the question, so what, was always forced on me. But I got a couple of slaps on the back of the head for it and haven't asked since. It didn't seem to complain much. I even thought it was all right to live like this. Until I grew up. Well, then I started to see how life works in other families. I made friends where I saw how all children are treated equally, and it touched me. I never complained to anyone, and, of course, did not reprimand my ancestors. I didn't want to be any extra problems. And over the years, the resentment grew. And then something even more unpleasant happened. I'll tell you what. This happened a few years ago. The whole family went to a camping trip. Mom bustled around the kitchen all morning making beautiful sandwiches for us. As always, I dragged heavy bags and packed everything in the car. I took a few boxes at a time, and they blocked my path. I honestly didn't see that John ran right out to meet me. In short, I crashed into him and all the boxes fell on him. They weren't exactly heavy, but he got hit on the head and lost consciousness. Can you imagine how hysterical my mother was? We immediately went to the hospital, where John was quickly revived. He was okay, just bumped his head a little. I think my mother was even worse off that day than he was. When I got home, I got a beating. I got the full amount, was accused of all the deadly sins, and it seemed that my mother was ready to just slap me, but restrained herself with the last of her strength. Everything I said sounded like a pathetic excuse, so I chose to remain silent. From that day on, my mother didn't speak to me for 2 weeks. Whenever I didn't try to make up, she ignored me. 2 days later, some people came to our house. I saw them talking to my mother about something. My mother was given an envelope. She signed somewhere and called me. She introduced me to these people, Mr. and Miss Jones. These are your new parents, she said. What? What do you mean? I expected a lot, that I would be deprived of money, internet, TV, dates with friends. Not that I'd be sold. At this moment, all the childish resentments, misunderstandings, and anger woke up in me. I felt so broken, so unnecessary, and it was terrible. I couldn't believe my mom would just sell me out like that. All she said to me at parting was that they were good people and that they were rich. I packed my things, still in a state of shock, and left the house. No one even said goodbye to me. I got in the car and we drove. I was silent all the way, even though these people tried to talk to me. They were very nice, tried to please me in every possible way, offered to stop by some stores to buy anything, but I didn't even know what to do now. How is this possible? When we got home, they showed me my room. I didn't leave it for 3 days. I didn't want to eat or drink. My new parents were worried. They tried to feed me, lured me with goodies, but I refused flatly. I needed time to digest the events. I was shattered, and then I decided to take some pills. It occurred to me that if my parents didn't need me, then who did? I found something in the medicine cabinet and drank, lay down on the bed, and felt how bad I was getting. The new mother came running into the room just as I was about to pass out. I woke up in the hospital, and they were giving me IVs. My new parents were sitting next to me, crying. Surprisingly, they were crying for a child they barely knew. Why? When I came to, my parents, they were very happy. They kissed me, hugged me, and scolded me for what I had done. My mother wiped away her tears, told me never to do it again. It was nice. For the first time in my life, I felt that someone needed me. In the end is when I started feeling better. When I got back to their house, I noticed that they had a really nice house and that they were so nice to me. My new dad showed me all the rooms, allowed me to go to his office sometimes, and my mom took me to the shops and dressed me up. Yes, I felt a little different in attitude love, awe, and warmth. It was strange to feel comfort from strangers more than from one's own parents. My mother would read me interesting books at night, my father would meet me after school, and every day we would build me a new bike from scratch. It was so cool to do something for yourself with your own hands. So about 6 months passed, and one day, my old parents came to our house. That mother was crying and asked me to come back. She said she made a mistake and regretted it. Come back to our house, son. We miss you, she said. The new mother got up from her chair and indignantly told them to leave the house. My old mother took an envelope of money out of her pocket and threw it on the table, saying that they'd changed their minds. We don't need money, she said. Ah, is that so? All your life you've been abusing him, hating him, humiliating him in every possible way, selling him to us for a measly $10,000, and now you have decided to take him away allegedly out of good feelings? Do you think I don't know that my son is being offered $500,000 to someone who will lead him to an old man Francis? My mother shouted. I sat there and didn't understand what was happening. Old mom wiped her eyes and started talking to me, like she misses me so much and loves me. I asked the new mother who Francis was. Then my mother told me that in fact, when I was born, I had real parents and they were my new parents. It so happened that my grandfather, Francis, being a very influential man, told his son to give his first child to him to raise. He planned to take the child and to take it to another country to raise as their heir to the empire. But my parents loved me very much, so they didn't want to give me up. They left me with a babysitter named Selina to hide me for a while, and when my parents came back for me, I was gone. Selina said that I was stolen from her, but in fact, she sold me to people who couldn't have children of their own. I grew up in a new family, but when I was 9 years old, my parents had their own children, and I fell by the wayside, and then I became a burden. We've been looking for you all these years, but we had to do it quietly, without making any noise, so that your grandfather wouldn't take you away from us, and he seems to have found out about you, and is now offering $500,000 to catch you, the father said. My old parents pretended they had nothing to do with it. There was silence in the air. I still didn't really understand what was going on, but my real mom sat down next to me and hugged me. She said there was no way in the world she was going to give me up to anyone now. The guests got up and left, with the psycho taking their money again, and were now deciding what to do and how to hide from the annoying grandfather. This is my story, friends. So now I'm even glad that I was sold, because I got my own parents, and also became rich.
Hi, guys. My name is Matthew. In life, sometimes unthinkable things happen, and people do not deliberate their actions. I want to tell you about how my foster parents sold me to my mom for $500,000. This phrase sounds absurd, but believe me, this happens in life. I hope my story will serve as a lesson to many. My story started from my birth. My mother got pregnant when she was only 17, naturally by accident. As she says, the father was her age and afraid of responsibility and disappeared somewhere. And she didn't have any relatives, so she grew up as an orphan. And so she had to face this problem, so to speak, one on one. I understand that it was not easy for her, because she was in fact still a child, and she didn't have a lot of money. The only solution was to leave me in an orphanage. But as you know, children are not well looked after there. Any mother wishes her child a good life, and she decided to take a dangerous and illegal step. She found a couple on the internet named Emma and Daniel, and right after I was born, she sold me to them for $1,000. So I didn't even know for a long time who my parents really were. Emma had problems with infertility. Doctors diagnosed her that she could not have any children. At first, they seemed to love me very much and treated me like their native child. They bought me everything new, took me to different entertainment places, and took care of my education. Everything seemed to be fine, right? But medicine does not stand still. Soon, when they found treatment for infertility, Emma was the first in line. A miracle happened and she was able to get pregnant. She also had a son named Michael. They were overjoyed. I do not know what happened, but with the birth of their own son, they began to treat me more rudely, not as their own biological child. At that time, I did not know that I was adopted, and so it was very strange for me why they treated me like this. They stopped paying attention to me. I even got used to the fact that I was often forgotten to be picked up from school. They took Michael to different courses while I started doing household chores after school at an early age. If Michael bought new toys, then his old and broken ones were given to me, and everything else like that. This cruel attitude towards me was manifested more and more every time. Over time, they began to scold me for the slightest mistake or fault. Every time I did something wrong, Daniel pulled out his leather belt. Of course, they were only trying to scare me, but I didn't even have to do anything wrong, or I could just be in the wrong place at the wrong time. When I turned 16, my parents said they were not going to pay for my studies anymore, and they did not care that I would drop out of school. But I didn't want to do that, so I had to get a job to somehow find money for the contract. Fortunately, the owner of the local fast food restaurant agreed to take me to work for half the rate. It gave me hope. I performed all the tasks that were given to me with great responsibility. After school, I immediately went to work and was there until night, every day. At first, I washed the dishes in the restaurant. Not to say that's a good job, but I liked the feeling that I could earn money on my own. After all, they say there is no bad work. Our team was also very friendly. It was even more pleasant to be there than at home. At least no one scolded me there, and my parents didn't even think of where I was or what I was doing. I think it was even easier for them that I wasn't home at all. Seeing my efforts, the chief decided to promote me and appointed me to a new position. I became a cashier and already took orders from guests. This was career growth, so to speak. I kept up with my studies. In my free time, I did my homework, so it was all right. But once I noticed that one woman began to frequent our fast food restaurant. She looked like she was well off, and for me, people like her rarely go to places like that. She only ordered coffee every day and could sit and watch me for hours. I couldn't figure out what she wanted from me, but I didn't dare ask. She also ordered only from me. Even when I was busy, she waited until I was free. You could say it even scared me. She watched my every move intently. You know how creepy it is if you're being watched all the time by someone you don't know? One day, I had to stay after work and clean the hall as a duty officer, and all the visitors had already left. But this woman didn't leave. When I went to warn her about the closing, she took my hand and asked me to sit down and talk. I was shocked by this, but I still sat down. She introduced herself as Linda and asked me to listen and understand. She said that she was my biological mother and told me how she went to such a step and, so to speak, sold me. After all, she was very young and helpless. But now she works for a prestigious firm and has a good home. And since the moment she lost me, she couldn't calm down about it and gave her word that no matter what, she would find me. My brain did not perceive this information, and I could not believe what she was saying, and this was nonsense. But at the time, I thought about it. The thought never left my mind. I decided to check with my parents, as it were, whether this was actually true. This news greatly surprised and angered them. Emma said that yes, it really was true. And if I want to, then I can go to her, but on one condition, that I will have to work and return all the money they spent on me since my childhood. Well, that's about $500,000. Well, until I could pay them, they took my documents. I hated being around them, so I packed my backpack and went to work. I wanted to pay the money as soon as possible and never see them again. I spent the night secretly at work, so the chief didn't know. I slept in the back room, and in the morning I went to school. Since the last conversation with Linda, she had stopped coming, and I hadn't seen her for a long time. But I really didn't care. I knew in my heart that this was my real mother. A week later, Emma called me and told me to come home immediately, but I didn't want to see them, so I turned off my phone so they wouldn't bother me, and quietly worked on. Whatever happened, I didn't care. Then Linda came to us one day. She had an envelope in her hand, and with tears in her eyes, she asked me to listen to her. She slipped me the envelope and told me that she took my documents and paid all the money that Emma and Daniel demanded from me. I was shocked because this is not a small amount. Unless she has such savings, in fact, it turned out that she sold her house, car, and even jewelry for this. But why, do you ask? Any mother would do anything for her child, and for Linda, it was not a pity to lose everything so long that her son did not suffer. She was very sorry that she sold me, and from that moment she realized her huge mistake. Now, my biological mother and I live together, but in a rented apartment. I'm not used to calling her mom yet, but I try. But all this is not important because I really felt now what a mother's love is. In life, everything happens, and sometimes people do not deliberate and do terrible things. Share what interesting stories you had. Maybe something similar happened to your friends.